I don't want to mince words here. I want to just call it like it is. In Week 17, in the fourth quarter against Washington, the Philadelphia Eagles tanked, meaning they intentionally lost the game. And I've heard people say, like, well, it's up for debate. No, it's not up for debate. Is the sky blue? Yes. Does the sun come out every morning? Yes. Did the Philadelphia Eagles tank? Yes, they did. Do not mince words. Don't pretend it's, well, what if they were trying to evaluate Nate Sudfeld? No. They were trying to lose that game. And losing got them the number 6 overall pick in the NFL draft rather than the number 9 overall pick. And at the start of the fourth quarter, down 3 points, 17-14, the Eagles took out their starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who was playing well enough to conceivably give them a chance to win the game. He had 2 touchdowns, looked pretty solid. They put in Nate Sudfeld, their backup. He immediately had 2 turnovers, and you could see everybody in the Eagles sideline was frustrated and annoyed and kind of wondering, why are we doing this? What's the point? What's happening here? And we have a lot to unpack. If I'd made this episode on Monday, I probably would have said something else. And I wanted to take my time and take a deep breath and think about it, not immediately react to what happened, because I want to have a clear mind when I talk about this topic. And I think, first of all, there's a lot of parties to talk about as a result of the Eagles tanking and what happened. But I want to start by saying I feel bad for the players on the Philadelphia Eagles. Coaches too, but more so the players. Their bodies are on the line. Any kind of football player, you work incredibly hard all week to prepare for a game, especially at the highest level. Your body's on the line every week. You put your body in. Your families are on the line. Your body's on the line, meaning your families are all in on what you're doing in your season. And it's your job and your livelihood. And so week to week, you're fighting incredibly hard to win a game. And so I understand why Philadelphia, and really the head coach, Doug Peterson, did what he did. He wanted to lose that game to get a better draft pick for next year. And I understand, because at some point, you're 4-11-1. You're not really fighting for anything this year. You might as well lose, because at some point, your bad losing record becomes about next year. Your season, the whole focus will shift and be, okay, now we're fighting for next year because our season is over. And Philadelphia was fighting for nothing. Winning that game really benefits them nothing other than denying a division rival, Washington, a chance at the playoffs. It would have been fun to play spoiler. But here's really the biggest thing that could be lost by Philadelphia tanking in this game. And it's lost trust. Your head coach, Doug Peterson, a lot of players in the locker room and in the organization, people feel like a sense of mistrust. Going, well, we didn't know this was the plan, and you can't really, if you're Doug Peterson and you're planning to lose the game, first of all, he wasn't planning to lose the game going in. It's not until you find out, other teams lost. Remember, it's the last game of the entire regular season. Now you go, if we have an opportunity to lose the game, it does benefit us to lose. And it felt like a shift at the end of the game. Like, we played 3 quarters. Now in the fourth quarter, we're going to take a move and try to lose the game. And so I want to, first of all, say this. I had a college coach who made moves I didn't agree with and said stuff to me behind the scenes I thought was incredibly wrong and inappropriate and weird, and it caused me to lose his trust. And I knew the moment I lost his trust, it was over. And so if you lose trust with a coach, it can really, I know if I was playing for the Eagles, I was the kind of guy who, if I was playing and our coach intentionally decided to lose a game, I'd never want to play for the guy ever again, ever. I'd be like, what? We worked all week. We had a game plan. We had this, we had that. We were in the game. It was close. It was a 3-point. We were down 3 points. And now you're not going to try to win. As a competitor, I would have been so frustrated. And I got to tell you, if I'm a player, I can't play for Doug Peterson ever again. I think that I understand any player who has that reaction. I get it. And the players I really feel bad for. So and even like Chris Collinsworth, the announcer on the game, the broadcaster, said, I would not have done what Philadelphia did. I couldn't have done it in the spirit of the game. And that's an emotional argument, but it's true. As a player, I could not have trusted a coach unless he told me going in, hey, we might tank, it's going to benefit us. Like, without knowing the plan, that sudden shift, and especially my body on the line, like an offensive lineman, you saw the offensive lineman in that game looked frustrated and upset. And Jason Kelsey sitting there going, man, like, this is not right. I understand all that. What I don't understand are, because there are a couple other parties of interest. So I feel bad for players completely. Eagles fans, I don't really understand why they were mad they lost a game. You had a losing season. You were not going to make the playoffs. Like, any Eagles fan who's mad, the only reason you can be mad is, well, hey, maybe you ruined your locker room culture forever. If you're mad about that, fine. If you're mad about losing the game to Washington, Who cares? Losing the game actually, on paper, helped Philadelphia. They have a better draft pick for next year. Maybe they trade down. You never know what they're going to do with that draft pick. Having the number 6 overall pick is much better than the number 9 overall pick. So I really don't understand Philadelphia fans who are mad at their team. Unless, of course, you're mad that, well, now our locker room culture is ruined and we don't trust our coach. All that makes sense to me. But if you're mad about the loss specifically, why? Losing helped you. Now, the Giants are mad. Giants fans, the Giants head coach, Joe Judge, had a long, emotional rant. I think a compelling rant, but he definitely appealed to people's emotion. Giants players were incredibly frustrated because, they beat the Cowboys on Sunday, and if the Eagles had beat Washington, the Giants would have made the playoffs. And they felt like, well, hey, you literally didn't, you tried to lose and it screwed us over. So people feel a sense of frustration. They got screwed over in New York. And on one hand, I sympathize with that. I kind of get you feeling cheated, especially like if Philadelphia had fought hard and lost, you're like, okay, well, we did our best and we still lost. But because Philadelphia didn't give it everything they had, you're like, you had a sense of hope and then it got ripped away from you. I understand the pain and frustration of that. However, I got to push back a little bit. Anybody in New York who's furiously angry at Philadelphia, guys, the Giants went 6-10. 6-10. You missed the playoffs. I mean, I've got a crazy, anybody complaining, I have a kind of novel, maybe crazy, outlandish idea. How about you have a winning record before you complain about not making the playoffs? I know that's harsh. I know that's weird, but I don't really understand. The Giants, start of week one, had complete control of their destiny. They had a bad losing season. You can't be mad you missed the playoffs. I know you're mad at Philadelphia, but don't be mad at another team for screwing you over. Be mad at your own team for not taking care of business week 1 through 17 when it mattered. I don't understand. I get the feeling of the injustice of getting screwed over by Philadelphia, but you, from week 1 on, had control of your own destiny, and you had a 6-10 record. You can't complain about not making the playoffs when you're a 6-10 football team. It's just weird and wrong to me. Although I will admit, I thought that Joe Judge's pseudo speech at a press conference was very compelling, fired me up. I really like Joe Judge. I think he's a great guy, especially in the media with PR. Man, what he said, that plays really well in New York. I think fans are even more on board with him now. And I feel good about Joe Judge moving forward. But I got to say again, if you're a 6-10 football team, you should not complain about not making the playoffs because you didn't take care of business when it mattered most. I mean, I guess you could argue you did. You beat the Giants. But what about week 1 through 16? Before that, you beat the Cowboys, I mean. But what about the weeks before week 17? You didn't have a winning record. I don't have a lot. I have a little sympathy because of the injustice of what happened. But my sympathy meter is on pretty much empty because of, again, you had a bad season in total. Now, I want to talk about Chris Collinsworth, the broadcaster for NBC doing Sunday Night Football. I've seen a lot of articles, people saying Chris Collinsworth might be in trouble with the NFL. And even on the broadcast, Chris Collinsworth literally had a line. He said, "I'm trying not to get fired here." And Chris Collinsworth better not be in trouble. So during the broadcast, Eagles, Washington, the Eagles clearly were trying to lose the game. They were tanking. And I actually want to give credit to Chris Collinsworth. He kept trying to give every opportunity of every kind of little bit of benefit of the doubt he could to Philadelphia. He said, well, maybe they want to give Nate Sudfeld an opportunity. Maybe they want to see what he can do, try to evaluate him. And then he said, well, personally, I don't understand it because I would want to see Jalen Hurts, what he could do in a 3-game, down 3 points in the fourth quarter of an important game. Wouldn't you rather evaluate, the guy who might be your starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts, next year? And the idea that Chris Collinsworth could be in trouble with the NFL, or maybe even fired, but even it's in trouble at all for pointing out what Philadelphia was doing, is absurd. I mean, I want to say this. As a broadcaster, whether you're a weatherman or a podcast host or a TV, whatever, your job is not only to the company you work for, but also to the people listening to what you're broadcasting. And, I mean, imagine if I walked outside and said, you know what, the sky isn't blue today. It's red. And you're like, unless there's like a bunch of smoke, like there was earlier this year when the world was burning down to a crisp on the West Coast. For the most part, the sky is not red. The sky is blue. And if the sky is blue and I say it's something else, you're going to go, well, that's weird. I don't trust you because you're lying. It doesn't make any sense. And so Chris Collinsworth's job is to be honest and to say what he believes. And I've always liked Chris Collinsworth. I know a lot of people hate on the guy, and he's got some boneheaded moments for sure, although I would dare anybody get on live TV and talk for hours and hours and hours at a time. It's way harder than anybody gives it credit for. But Chris Collinsworth was just being honest and doing his job and saying what he saw in front of him. And if you're watching in New York, you were furious because your team is getting screwed over because the Eagles were clearly not trying to win that football game. And you have I think, a responsibility to your audience to be honest about what's in front of you. Chris Collinsworth was like, this is weird. I couldn't do it. And he said everything but the word tanking. I watched very closely. I took in detailed notes. Chris Collinsworth never actually said, wow, the Eagles are clearly trying to lose, but he hinted at it over and over and said everything but that. And so the idea that Chris Collinsworth could be in trouble is absurd and ridiculous and stupid. It's part of why I never want to work for a network if I can avoid it. I like what I got going on the internet, got a big audience. I'm totally happy. And it's so crazy to me that by observing what's happening in front of you, Chris Collinsworth could get in trouble. How about you find the Eagles or do an investigation into Philadelphia? If the NFL hates tanking that much, hey, blame the team. Get in trouble, focus on the team who's doing it rather than the broadcaster who's simply being honest about what's going on. Very weird to me. I don't think Chris Collinsworth's going to get fired. He shouldn't. And if he does get fired, it's because they hate him for another reason, and this is just the reason to get rid of him. Kind of like you have a girl who's like, I broke up with him because his brown shoes were stupid. It's like, well, there's no way you broke up with a guy because you didn't like his shoes. You hated something else about him. This was just the straw that broke the camel's back that gave you a reason to fire him. So if by any chance Chris Collinsworth gets in big trouble and gets fired, it's not really because he pointed out the factual information that Philadelphia was tanking. And I wanted to have a whole segment about that because it drove me nuts to see that. Like, really, Chris Collinsworth is under fire for being honest? How stupid is that? And I just, the corporate world, what a weird reality. And again, like, it's even weirder. Have you not watched the Jaguars at all this year? Gardner Minshew sitting on the sideline, twiddling his thumbs going, I'm your best quarterback. Can I please play football? And Jacksonville's like, nah, we're going to go to Mike Glennon. We're going to go to Jake Luton because that's what we think is going to help us win football games. A rookie quarterback who was drafted in the 6th round from Oregon State, Jake Luton. Okay, Luton, I don't even know his name. I don't even care enough. It's like, come on, guys. You're going to get mad at Philadelphia for tanking for 1/4 of an entire season and then be totally honest about what happened with the Jacksonville Jaguars. You think they weren't trying to lose a little bit? Once it was a real possibility they could get the number 1 overall pick in Trevor Lawrence, you think they weren't like, well, we better, hey, you're kind of injured today. And you know what? Gardner Minshew, we really don't think you have they weren't fighting to win. Are you kidding me? So it's a bit disingenuous that everyone's mad at Philadelphia while acknowledging that there are other teams in the NFL. Clearly, I think specifically Jacksonville, who appeared to be tanking at the end of the year and trying to lose football games. It just wasn't as subtle. And I think people are mad because it was a game with playoff implications and the final game of the year, all eyes on that game. It's a primetime game. It was too obvious what Philadelphia did, but other teams had done it all year. And so it's a bit weird that we chose to focus and hone in on Philadelphia's evil and wrong. Okay, I wouldn't have done it. But I also understand why they did it. And I think if you're going to be mad at Philadelphia, let's do some investigations into other teams as well. I guarantee I would love to watch the practice film of Mike Glennon, Jake Luton, and Gardner Minshew. I would have a pretty strong belief that Gardner Minshew is the best quarterback out of those three, but he didn't play again this year. He got benched and then hurt and then benched and then they, for some crazy reason, never brought him back. Their best quarterback. They're not trying to win games. So, I don't know. Kind of weird. But again, I feel bad for the Eagles players. If you're a player who's trying to win a football game, putting your body on the line, all this preparation, you put together a game plan, you did all the work, only to have your coach pull the rug out from under you and say, we're not trying to win. And apparently Philadelphia, there were people in the locker room and on the sideline very angry that had to be physically restrained from Doug Peterson in his face, very upset about it. So I hope Doug Peterson, I hope it's worth it. Do you have the number 6 overall pick, but you might have ruined your entire locker room culture to move up 3 places in the NFL draft? I hope it was worth it, because if your culture's ruined, I know he won a Super Bowl, but those players that he won a Super Bowl with are mostly gone, and things change quickly. All it takes is one veteran guy who is listened to in the locker room to go, Man, Doug has changed. Man, Doug, we lost Frank Reich. Frank Reich is why we won a Super Bowl. Like, a couple seeds of doubt and a couple veterans saying, oh, this is nonsense, bam, you lose the locker room. So I hope Doug Peterson doesn't lose the locker room for his sake. But if he lost the locker room over 3 picks in the NFL draft, I mean, that's a gigantic mistake in my opinion. So we'll see what happens in Philadelphia. And there's definitely going to be more coming out of the story as maybe as the draft happens or as the years go on. This could be a key moment where everybody in Philadelphia lost all faith for their head coach, Doug Peterson.